I used to laugh whenever people talked about haunted houses or strange things they couldn't explain. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. I just figured there had to be a logical reason behind every story. Looking back, I think that confidence made it easier to ignore the warning signs. The strange part is, nothing that happened to me started with a loud noise or something impossible. It started with something so ordinary, I almost missed it completely. And that's exactly why it still keeps me awake. It all began the day I moved into a quiet little house outside a farming town. The house wasn't impressive. It sat by itself near a quiet country road, surrounded by old trees and tall grass that hadn't been cut in a while. The landlord told me the previous owner had passed away peacefully. His family had moved away soon after. That explained why the place had been empty for so long. Honestly, I thought I had found a bargain. The floors creaked a little, the wallpaper had started peeling in a few places, but nothing about it felt wrong. In fact, it felt peaceful. The first month passed without any problems. I unpacked my things, went to work, cooked dinner, watched television before bed. It felt like any other house. Then one evening, I noticed something strange. At exactly 8:17, every sound disappeared. No birds, no insects, no wind. Even the old ceiling fan seemed quieter. It only lasted about a minute. Then everything returned like nothing had happened. I checked the time again the next evening. The same thing happened. Exactly. 8:17. I thought maybe one of the neighbors had an explanation. So I asked the woman living next door. She was outside watering flowers when I walked over. She seemed friendly enough. So I asked if she'd ever noticed how quiet everything became every evening. She stopped watering the flowers. Just stopped. She looked at me for a second. Not surprised, not confused, almost disappointed. Then she forced a small smile and quietly said, "You'll get used to it." That was it. No explanation, no conversation. She simply turned around and walked back inside. For some reason, that bothered me more than if she'd laughed. I tried to forget about it, but the nights started becoming very different. About a week later, the dreams began. Every single night. I would find myself standing in the hallway outside my bedroom. Everything looked exactly the way it did in real life. Same pictures on the wall, same wooden floor, same darkness. At the far end of the hallway, someone was standing there, facing the wall, completely still. I never saw a face. I never heard a voice. They never moved. Until the very end. Just before I woke up, the figure slowly tilted its head. Not toward me, toward my bedroom. That's when I'd wake up. Every time, heart racing, trying to convince myself it was only a dream. For a while, I kept telling myself the dreams didn't mean anything. People have nightmares all the time. That's what I wanted to believe. Then one night, I woke up before the dream ended. I was still lying in bed, breathing hard. The room was dark, except for a little moonlight coming through the window. Something made me look toward the bedroom door. It was open, and the hallway outside looked exactly like it had in the dream. Same shadows, same silence, same
empty space at the end of the hall.
I stayed where I was, listening, waiting. Nothing happened. But somehow, that made it worse. The next day, I decided to distract myself by cleaning the attic, and that's when everything changed. Saturday felt like the perfect day to clean. The attic had been untouched since I moved in. It was full of old furniture, dusty boxes, and things nobody had bothered to throw away. While moving an old wardrobe, I noticed something behind it. A tiny wooden door. Barely large enough to crawl through. It wasn't locked. I remember thinking it was probably just another storage space. So, I opened it. I wish I hadn't. What I found inside wasn't valuable, but it was far more unsettling. The floor inside the compartment was covered with folded pieces of paper. Hundreds of them. Maybe more. They weren't scattered randomly. Someone had placed them there on purpose. I picked one up, carefully unfolded it, and read the message. Do not answer if it learns your name. I opened another. Same message. Then another. Exactly the same. Every single note carried those exact words. I stood there for a long time, trying to imagine why anyone would write the same warning hundreds of times. Eventually, I convinced myself someone had played a strange prank, so I threw every note away. I carried every note downstairs, stuffed them into a large trash bag, tied it shut, and left it by the kitchen door. That evening, I watched the clock. 8:16. Then, 8:17. The silence returned, only this time, it wasn't completely silent. Someone whispered my name, very softly. Not outside, not behind me. It sounded like it came from inside the walls. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just stood there, trying to convince myself I hadn't heard anything at all. Morning finally came, but the house had one more surprise waiting for me. I barely slept that night. As soon as the sun came up, I walked straight into the kitchen. The trash bag was still there. I untied it, looked inside. Empty. Every note was gone. There wasn't a single piece of paper left. I searched the kitchen, the hallway, the attic, even outside. Nothing. I kept asking myself the same question. Had someone taken them? Or had they never really left? I still don't know which answer scares me more. The next afternoon, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, my neighbor was standing there. She looked different. Tired, like she hadn't slept. She asked if I had been home the night before. I told her I had. She nodded slowly. Then she asked a question I'll never forget. Who was standing behind you? I remember staring at her. I actually laughed for a second because I thought she was joking. I was alone, I told her. She didn't argue. She didn't explain. She just looked past me, toward the hallway inside my house. Then she quietly turned around and walked away. That was the first time
I wondered if I wasn't the only one noticing something strange.
Over the next few days, little things started happening. Nothing dramatic, nothing I could prove.
What was that?
I'd catch movement from the corner of my eye, just for a second.
Just my imagination.
Every time I turned, there was nothing there. Sometimes it happened while I was making dinner. Sometimes while I was reading. Once, I even stopped my car because I thought someone had stepped into the road. There was nobody there. I kept telling myself I was tired, that stress could make people imagine things. But deep down, I knew something had changed. One evening, I was sitting in the living room reading. The house was completely quiet. Then, my smart speaker lit up. I looked over at it, thinking maybe I'd said something by accident. I hadn't. After a second, it answered anyway. I'm listening. That was it. The light turned off. The room was quiet again. I unplugged it immediately. But that didn't make me feel any better, because the speaker wasn't what scared me. It was the idea that something had spoken first. I'd installed a small security camera near the front door when I first moved in. I almost forgot it was there. That night, I opened the recordings, fast-forwarded through the footage. Everything looked normal. Until 8:17. The video showed me walking out of my bedroom, slowly crossing the hallway, then stopping in front of the living room wall. I didn't move, not once. I just stood there for exactly 1 minute. Then I calmly walked back to bed. I watched the clip 3 more times. I still couldn't remember doing any of it. The following night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to sleep. I wanted to know what really happened at 8:17. I turned on every light in the house, made a cup of coffee, sat down at the kitchen table, and waited. The clock kept ticking. 8:15, 8:16. Every second felt longer than the last. I kept telling myself, whatever happened, I was going to see it with my own eyes. I believed I was finally in control. I couldn't have been more wrong. The second hand touched 8:17, and everything stopped. The refrigerator went quiet. The wind disappeared. Even the old pipes in the walls seemed to hold their breath. I stayed exactly where I was, afraid that even the smallest movement would somehow make things worse. Then, I heard it. Not loud, not threatening. Just close. You finally know where I stand. The voice didn't sound angry. It didn't sound happy either. It sounded certain. I turned around as slowly as I could. There was no one there. Just an empty kitchen. And a silence that suddenly felt far too heavy. I don't know how long I stood there. Maybe a few seconds, maybe longer. When I finally looked toward the refrigerator, I froze. A folded piece of paper was being held in place by a small magnet. I was certain it hadn't been there before. I walked over slowly. I don't remember putting the note down. I only remember walking outside and not stopping until I reached my truck. By morning, my decision had already been made. I packed only what I needed, loaded everything into my truck, locked the front door one last time. Almost 3 months later, my phone rang. It was the landlord. He sounded embarrassed. He apologized for calling out of nowhere. Then he asked me something strange. He wanted to know if I'd ever experienced unusual silence in the house. I didn't answer right away. He told me the new tenant had moved out after only 4 nights. They hadn't explained why. They'd simply handed over the keys and left. I wanted to tell him everything about the whispers, the notes, the silence. Instead, I just said, no. It's been almost a year now. I live in a different city, a different apartment, a different life. Most days, I don't think about that house anymore. At least, I try not to. But every now and then, everything around me becomes completely silent. Just for a moment. No traffic, no voices, no wind. Nothing. The first thing I do, every single time, is look at the clock. I never expect to see 8:17. But somehow, part of me is always afraid that I will. And every time the room goes quiet, I still catch myself wondering whether something is standing exactly where I can't see it. I hope I never find out.